Many of the threats to the world in Final Fantasy XIV story can be traced back to one man, Hermes. He's a complex character who appears in various forms. Some consider him one of the most evil characters in the game, but is that really true? Hermes is a man who wants to do good, but finds himself defeated by his own despair, leading to many mistakes. Let's dissect Hermes and his other forms to better understand why his journey is truly tragic. But first, an ancient size spoiler alert. We'll be covering a lot of ground in the game's story. I hope you enjoy. First, let's establish the important pieces of Hermes' character from the beginning. The ancients lived thousands of years before the modern story on Etheirys. Hermes leads Elpis, a research facility atop lush, floating islands. It's here that researchers test their creations and eventually submit them to observers to determine if they're suitable to live on Etheirys. Emet-selch is another ancient. He's a member of the Convocation of 14. That's the council tasked with protecting Etheirys. He wants to see if Hermes is the right person to take up the empty seat of Fandaniel on the Convocation. Hermes knows the former Fandaniel quite well, referring to him as a mentor. We also need to understand a little more about ancients and their society. They are a much taller species than modern races and live much longer. The ancients have a strong affinity to creation magics. This allows them to do wondrous feats. The ancients share many traits with other utopian societies in fiction. They are at the height of technology and magic. Because of this, the ancients see their purpose as finding a way to be of a benefit to mankind. Once that duty is complete, they die to rejoin the ethereal sea.
Mankind is the life of Etheirys. Each of us, a drop of blood flowing through its veins, bearing sustenance. In our finite time upon it, 'tis our duty to make it a better place.
That's the tradition, but a few ancients choose to continue living. Now, this passing isn't meant to be sad. Emet-selch says it's a joyous moment acknowledging a person's great accomplishments. It's this view on life that really troubles Hermes. He cannot stand the process of deciding which creatures deserve to live.
Leave to replace another. To be replaced. It changes nothing. Tell me, do you think it right that we sacrifice all these lives for the sake of the star? And when the star has reached perfection, what then? If all who are satisfied choose to die, shall we all die in satisfaction?
It's evident that Hermes cares so deeply for creation that it spiraled him into a deep depression. We see that when he's dispatched to eliminate a pack of creatures he created that were becoming too violent. That's ultimately why he sends the media on their mission across the Sea of Stars. He wants to know if any society out there has found a reason for living. As it stands now, Hermes doesn't see the point. The media's research will determine if he's right. Speaking of Medion, let's talk about her relationship with Hermes. She's his most prized creation, an empath powered by dynamis, an energy that reacts to powerful emotions. Medion almost exclusively spends her time with Hermes until the Warrior of Light, Hythlodaeus, and Emet-selch come along. So when she mentions that Hermes' dark and sad thoughts are impacting her, we know that has to be significant. Now that doesn't mean Hermes doesn't care about her. He speaks very fondly of Medion, even promising her gifts of her favorite flowers. Hermes insists on needing more time with Medion before she's evaluated because deep down he knows the observers would decide she's imperfect. He even transforms and whisks her away from the others when he's afraid they might destroy her. There's plenty of evidence to suggest Hermes having a deep love for Medion. Now, despite how much he cares for her, Hermes puts Medion on the path to destruction. He ultimately designed a very flawed mission for her with a vague, impossible question to answer. what makes life worth living. Emet-selch chastises Hermes for this. Hermes also encourages Medion to connect with her sisters after she begins to break down. He even protects her after hearing the collective consciousness's plan for the Song of Oblivion, a world-shattering event that would end all life on Etheirys.
We have discarded those creations that we deemed flawed. If we ourselves are flawed, does it not stand to reason that we too should be discarded? Let us settle this with a determination.
And he erases the memories of some of the only people who could stop it from happening. All of these events, what we're seeing is the fabric of Hermes' mind slowly unraveling. He already had little faith that his life was worth living. Now the report on the suffering and despair from other worlds is sending him over the edge. Hermes says he will stay behind to oppose Medion, a part of making this twisted experiment fair, in his words. He's obviously not of a sound mind when this happens, but he does keep to his word, and it's a good thing he does, because Hermes is a large part of why the ancients stalled the final days in the first place. Hermes, now the new Fandaniel, learns that the final days can be stopped by changes in aether currents. The Convocation proposes summoning the dark primal Zodiarch to forestall the calamity. This comes at a terrible price, however, half of Etheirys' population being sacrificed. Ultimately, this is what splinters several different factions in the ancient society, but at the end of the day, the primal is summoned and stops the final days. It's important to note that, like other primals, Zodiarch can temper people to his will. This includes Fandaniel. It's at this point in the story that the Convocation of 14 are considering a second sacrifice, another half of the remaining population, in order to restore Etheirys to what it used to be. This is when Hydaelyn shows up to sunder Etheirys and imprison Zodiarch on the moon. This stops the world from ending, but also prevents more sacrifices being made to Zodiarch. Fandaniel, like countless others, has his soul torn into 14 pieces, each scattered to a different shard of the world. The piece of the soul on the source, our world, is reborn as Amon. He shares many qualities as Fandaniel, but like other sundered souls, they are not the same person. We know this from differences between the Warrior of Light, Arnbert, and their original soul of Azim. Amon lived during the Third Astral Era as a technologist and magician in Alagon. Amon is gifted with knowledge and very ambitious. He wanted to restore the Empire to its former glory. That's why he resurrected the first Alagon Emperor, Zond. Amon hoped that Zond would bring prosperity and conquest, but the revived Emperor is not what he once was. He's haunted by memories of his death. That's why Zond makes a pact with the Cloud of Darkness to destroy the world by opening a void gate, which would reduce the world to nothingness. This situation shares so many similarities with Medion and the final days. Hermes breaks the rules with his creation and starts the final days. Amon breaks the rules by bringing back the dead, starting another calamity. This moment in time is when emet-selch visits Amon. He escaped the sundering, so his soul is intact. He awakens Amon's memories of his life as Fandaniel and gives him a glimpse into the future. Amon decides to join emet-selch as an Ascian. That's a cult of ancients working to break Zodiarch free from his prison. It's important to note that not all ancients are Ascians. There is a difference. Amon becomes Fandaniel once more and begins working to free Zodiarch from his prison, but not before leaving behind a clone of himself in the Crystal Tower before it's locked in stasis. This Amon clone is found several thousand years later by the Warrior of Light and ultimately killed to stop the Void Gate from opening. Fandaniel re-emerges in modern times to the Garlean Emperor Xenos. He has recently killed his father, the former emperor, for threatening to potentially kill the Warrior of Light with the Black Rose biological weapon. Because of this, the Empire is in tatters, and Fandaniel has an offer for Xenos. Use all the Garlean resources to build towers collecting Aether all around Aetheris. Those towers send the Aether to the main tower in Garlemald to fire at the moon. That breaks the seal, keeping Zodiark dormant, allowing the Dark Primal to decimate the star once again. Xenos doesn't really care about what Fandaniel wants, but the Ascian promises him something tantalizing in return. A one-on-one clash with the Warrior of Light, promising it to be the greatest battle in history.
Permit you to go on a righteous rampage instead of partaking in this delicious meal? I think not. I must say, I have gone to great lengths to reunite you with my lord. When I discovered that his friend was in this neck of the woods, I suggested inviting you over for dinner.
It's clear from Fandaniel's actions and words that he is unhinged. He's very verbose and animated, almost like an entertainer. This is a far cry from the Hermes we met on Elpis, which does make sense considering they aren't the same person, but they are repeating the same mistakes. Fandaniel, with all the knowledge given to him by Emmet, still sees no point in living. In fact, he's grown to loathe mankind and wants to see everything destroyed.
The time has come to fulfill your heart's desire, my desire! To relieve those wretched creatures of their meaningless existence!
The key difference between Hermes' goal and Fandaniel's goal is that the latter wants to die as well. The whole reason he wants Zodiark freed is to replace the Primal's heart with himself, then destroy the heart when it's weak enough from a battle with the warrior. And that's exactly what happens. Fandaniel's plan goes off without a hitch, and he dies, believing the world is going to end. Now, ultimately, we know that doesn't happen, but we do encounter Fandaniel one more time in the Eotoscope. That's the Sharlayan's method for peering into the ethereal sea. He's the final boss of that dungeon, seen as Amon the Undying. Now, before we get to his final scene, there's actually some details we can learn about this encounter from Amon's Triple Triad card. The description reads, "A fragment of the master technologist Amon's spirit, sunk deep within the ethereal sea. The soul was originally that of Hermes before it was sundered by Hydaelyn and reborn countless times over the ages. Yet this lingering shard is no longer him or even Fandaniel, but belongs wholly and utterly to Amon." It's clear from the text that Hermes is no more. His soul has been twisted beyond measure, and no amount of reincarnation can bring the original Hermes back. Only the madman remains. We fight and defeat Amon the Undying one last time. He reflects on his original life as Hermes, even expressing a little bit of doubt and regret over his actions.
That is my truth, my answer to the question. And yet, even as the words pass my lips, I am filled with doubt. Has my search reached its end? Was this the only way? After all these years, is this the answer I was hoping for?
One response from the warrior even surprises Amon that he would offer friendship after all of the atrocities he's committed. Now, this conversation is interrupted by Asahi Zas Brutus's vengeful spirit. He's so angry for Amon stealing his corpse and betraying Xenos, someone he really respected. So Asahi drags Amon's soul to the deepest depths of the ethereal sea as revenge. Hermes, Fandaniel, and Amon all have something in common, aside from being pieces of the same soul. All three were defeated by their own despair. Fandaniel saw no point in living and wanted the source destroyed. Hermes searched for the meaning of life and never found it. They got so swallowed up by their own sadness that they never found the strength to climb out. Fandaniel is certainly more of an insanity situation, but Hermes is a man who tried to do good things. He genuinely loved all of creation. He saw the problems with the ancients' way of life before anyone else. Hermes found the way to forestall the final days, but he also makes many mistakes, like sending the media on a doomed mission, encouraging them to flee to the edge of the universe, and erasing so many people's memories. And most importantly, we realize that we can empathize with Hermes. We've all found ourselves in a dark place mentally before. We connect with his struggle. All of these things make Hermes an incredibly compelling character and a well-written villain for the story. So what did you think about Hermes? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I'd also really appreciate a like if you enjoyed this video, and feel free to subscribe so you know when the next one is out. Let me know what characters and topics you want to see covered in future videos. Until then, warriors, take care, and I'll see you next time.